What I just learned about gold blew me away. I could not believe this fact that I learned about this precious metal, and I'm going to share it with you in this video as we explore. Gold. The name just evokes sort of a sense of curiosity and a sense of value and worth, a store of value that has been recognized for thousands of years. Why? Because of its physical properties that do not change. The image on your screen right now here is an example of gold that has been cast into bars. But gold can be cast into many different shapes. It can be hammered out. It is very malleable. In fact, all sorts of treasures have been found for thousands of years in the ground, and they look exactly as they did when the day that they were buried. That's the amazing thing about gold. It has been mined and refined for as long as it's been around, discovered in those forms, for thousands of years. Pretty remarkable to see it in all of its different form. And, gold is a metal that is stored up in central banks around the world. It is used in jewelry. But the thing about gold that I find fascinating is that it is indeed still valued today. In fact, you ask anybody on the street, and more likely they will say that gold is valuable. They may not know exactly how valuable it is. In fact, we've seen many man-on-the-street videos where people offer, to people to take the guess on how much gold is worth right now, the spot price of gold. And many people get it wrong, for sure. But nonetheless, when they think of gold, they do think of it as a valuable thing. It's ingrained even in our culture here in the West, although the culture in the East is so much more in tune with this precious metal. But nonetheless, what I'm about to share with you now should hopefully surprise many of you about gold and its value and its production. Because I'm going to be sharing with you an infographic from Visual Capitalist that talks a little bit about gold and its production over the past 200 years. This is a staggering statistic I'm going to share with you right at the top here. 200 years of global gold production. In the past 200 years, 86% of all above ground gold has been mined. Let that sink in. I kind of figured it would be about that. In fact, I've done other videos where we've looked at the production of gold and silver. By the way, both metals have been, most of it's been produced since 1900. But you look back through the course of history, and especially gold, which has its own unique outlook, I think its own view. Gold is separate from any other metal in terms of being treasured out there. Silver has a dual purpose. It is mined, but it is also utilized. And a lot of those uses, and gold especially being mined as a byproduct of other metals, that's part and parcel to why it is considered, maybe not quite as lustrous as gold is. In terms of, even though it may have the most shine of all the metals out there, gold, though, is set apart from all the other metals, including silver. So when you think about that, mining of gold is thousands of years old, and it's been valued for thousands of years. But because of technology that we see, and discoveries, and human exploration, 86% of it has been mined in the past 200 years. And to me, that is just a mind-blowing statistic. So let's take a look at this infographic and how that mining has transpired over those 200 years. We can look back to the California gold rush of 1848. Folks, that was a huge deal. In fact, the gold rush of 1848 led to the 49ers, which was a massive influx of people that have made their way into the California region to begin large-scale gold production here in the United States. In 1886, prospectors discovered the Witwatersrand Basin in South Africa, which went on to dominate global gold production for 100 years, for a century. And so that was what happened there and it started there. But you look at that back in 1848, look how much more gold was produced then than the time beforehand. Not a whole lot. And we're looking at these different countries and what South Africa is doing, what the United States is doing. And the United States is in this cyan color here. I'm not sure that I really get how some of these colors were chosen, but nonetheless, there it is. So the United States accounted for 1/3 of global gold production in the year 1900, with around 120 tons mined that year. And here we can see the scale of the years since this started. We can see what has happened over that course of time, over 1900s. And then at around 1900, well, things picked up pretty dramatically. And Mexico kind of began to be seen in the mix here with that green line there. And here's Kazakhstan with its sort of a bright yellow, I guess is what that is. But then we look through here, these other nations. Russia is in red. So Russia had been mining gold. In fact, Russia was the largest producer before the gold rush of 1848, consistently mining pretty much throughout time here. Russia has been doing with gold. But South Africa really started picking up. A lot more discoveries in South Africa, and it was the lion's share, even though there's been some great consistent production of gold in the United States through this period, up until 1920, until 1940, and we go and progress through time here, and we can see that around 1960, South Africa's gold production up until 1970 had peaked in 1970 at over 1,000 tons of gold. And we can see other nations starting to get on board, and the rest of the world is shown here in gray in the movement of mining there. And so we can see as we go towards the end of this production here, we can see all of these countries come together here through 2022 is where this stops. And this is fascinating to see, and how Russia has picked up dramatically here at around the 1975 or so, dramatic increase with hardly anything happening through that period of time, through the 40s into the 60s. A lot of that is World War II. They spent most of their resources there. Australia's gold production recovered in the 1980s as low-grade operations became profitable due to rising gold prices. And Australia is in dark blue. And we can see here, going back through time, they were right up there, the second largest producer after the United States. And in 1899, we saw the Perth Mint being formed here because of their great production and a lot of that gold had to be processed and mined there. That's why the San Francisco Mint was put into operation as well, too. Going back into the more modern age, we can see how much more gold has been produced. Peak mining in South Africa stopped in 1970, which, by the way, that's when the peak mining production was in South Africa, which is only 3 years after the Krugerrand entered into the market as the first 1-ounce gold bullion coin in the world. Pretty remarkable and amazing. Canada is showing a strong gold production here, and this kind of mix between that bluish green, bluish, the deeper blue here, cyan. The colors of this, I'm not necessarily like how they did the colors in this infographic, but nonetheless, there's where we are at. And it was only in recent years when we see South African gold production kind of squeezed out by the rest of the world and by China picking up dramatically. In 2007, China overtook South Africa as the world's largest gold-producing country. And you look at where that is now, and this large gap here pales in comparison, by the way, compared to where it was with South Africa back then. But look at all of these other countries producing more and more. U.S. Looks like the U.S. reached peak gold production around the year 2000 or so. And Australia is still very, very strong. Russia is the second largest producer, with Australia very close behind, not that far behind from Russia. In fact, they're showing right around the same amount of gold produced in 2022, 320 tons. China just a little bit above that with 330 tons. And then you look down through here, and the rest of the world, though, has 1,030 tons. Where is all the rest of that gold coming from? Besides the 17 countries above, commercially significant quantities of gold are mined in more than 25 other countries. Artisanal mining, some of it could be illegal or unethical gold mining as well too, but nonetheless, they're the largest producers as the rest of the world. That's pretty amazing. I think it's part and parcel to what I'm talking about, artisanal, but also the technology has just expanded as such that more and more countries are doing it. Look at Peru, has made its way since about 1990, dramatically increasing its gold production. It was barely a blip on the radar through the rest of the scale through the course of the last 200 years. Uzbekistan is still considering to do a lot of mining, and we're seeing Ghana as well as Indonesia. So pretty amazing to see all these countries produce, and how that is just expanding the gold supply out into the market. Expansion of the gold supply, though, compared to the amount of people in the world, and one would think, well, gold should be less because look at all this gold that's being produced. However, and there's a lot of people too, and there's a lot of demand for it. And so therefore, that's why gold's price is so high, one of the reasons why. But it also gives you perspective as to maybe there is a good reason why why gold has not exploded in price. And by the way, I would love to see the same type of chart for silver. If I find it and comes across its way, I will do a video on it as well. But the thing is yes, there's a lot of gold and silver being produced, which means there's no shortage of gold, there's no shortage of silver, but is there enough to keep up with the demand, even with the increase in production? It'll be very interesting to see, but I find it quite fascinating to see what has happened over the past 200 years, with 86% of all the above ground gold being mined during that period. A staggering statistic indeed. And where will we go from here? When will we reach actual peak gold production? According to this statistic here, what we're saying, that looks like it happened in around 2019, as it's starting to come down a little bit. Who knows if that will be the case? We've seen other peaks in the past too, overall, and they've come down and then they've increased. As gold gets more expensive and the spot price, it becomes more economically viable to mine it. So, and with technology increasing, we're going to see probably more of it occur. So there you have it. Let me know what your thoughts are on this story. I would like to, in this news and this statistic, I would like to extend a multitude of gratitude to you all for taking the time to watch, and to encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.